some legendary man with immense power. Moving on, next scene. Then this white horse gets chased by this lady, but that brain of hers makes her fall into a water ditch, and then she stumbles upon a ship of a Viking, an abandoned ship at that, cause it's riddled with a lot of damage and overgrown plants. The woman heads inside, exploring this rusty joint, only to find the inside is filled with chains, so she lifts one up, and there's her price, a rotting woman. She then finds herself surrounded with the war-torn remains of the crew. She makes the genius idea of moving this big Viking dude just a little, but he moves. Turns out there's a little boy with a sword behind him. The woman slowly shoves the sword away and the boy breaks down. He's like 8, and he's already seen some Vietnam type of business. The woman soon consoles him with a blanket. He's taken back to the tribe by this lady, and one of the beer-bellied men there heralds him as some kind of demon that has never seen the sun due to his skin color. Another man actually defends him, saying he's just a boy, but the old cooch just think he'll turn into a monster like others of his kind. The lady from before walks in and says that they'll be just as bad as the Vikings if they let him end his life in the cold. So the big chief declares that he stays.
He stays.
Night comes, and the lady tucks that boy in while asking his name, which triggers a Vietnam-level PTSD from that boy's dreams of violence and brutality between the natives and the Vikings. He wanted to spare a little girl, but his father insisted on ending her miserable life. He refused by dropping his sword, so Dad shows some great parenting skills by ending the girl and disowning his son with a backhand. He gets brutally whipped and then sees a white horse pass by. This makes him wake up, pick up a log, and just put it in the fire. He ganders at his sword. And would you look at that? It's been 15 years. The tribe looks like it's getting along okay. And here's our boy now. He's fully a man, named Ghost. The children are thrilled to just flock around him. Then a neighboring friendly tribe visits. Pathfinder and his tribe are greeted with open arms and are welcome to the trade. But he says he's here for more than just trade.
I come for more than trade.
Ghost then eyeballs some lady from the neighboring tribe. Then this kid flocks to this dude playing a primitive harmonica. Ghost meets up with the man from the neighboring tribe who also has eyes set on the girl from earlier, so Ghost gets no handshake.
She's beautiful.
The Pathfinder talks with one of the chief of the tribe, and he says that an avalanche wiped out 3 hunting parties. One of them was supposed to be his heir. Here comes the pretty young lady named Starfire, and she's apparently the daughter of the Pathfinder. The chief says they'll have a celebration later at night, and he offers the Pathfinder to lead the ritual. He also says the mythical prophecy is about to become true. Later in the ritual, all the important tribe members gather around to be graced by Starfire, to be fully fledged warriors, all except Ghost. The Pathfinder says he still has to earn his keep by slaying the demons that haunt his past. Until he faces his past, he'll never know his true self. Suddenly, he stands up and declares that he'll find his own path, leaving the ritual.
Then I will find my own path.
Outside in the dark marshes, he practices and studies the blade with precision and grace. Suddenly, his father comes in to talk to him. Ghost is contemplating who he is, but his father says that he might be from a different race, but he's still a son of this tribe. This is a much better father than the last one. The next day, Ghost is humoring the children with their flute. Then he comes to the waterfalls to behold Starfire's beauty. Hours pass, and Ghost packs for a hunting trip. He bids his mother and father a respectful farewell. Then he walks away with a little girl. They go to the forest, and he says he's here to look after her and her doll. So he tells her not to venture too far.
Don't go too far, but
A few hours of hiking set in, and the Ghost finds some prey to hunt down, while the girl picks up some berries, until someone assaults him. She breaks free, but the dog takes a shortcut to Yulin, China. Turns out the assaulter is a Viking. They corner the girl, toying around with her sadistically while she's screaming and runs in fear. Miraculously, the girl makes it back crying to her tribe, but the chief begins to sense dangers approaching. He's right, because horses begin to race to the small village, and since their defenses are broken, let the slaughter begin. Ghost, from afar, hears the war horn being used, but the massacre's still going. Ghost races back to his village, where droves of innocent natives are finished, while their homes and belongings are pillaged. Basically, we need Live Leak back to cover this scene. Ghost looks from the mountains, and sees from afar that his village is burning. Sadly, once he gets there, he's too late. Bodies covered in smoke, and scavengers as far as the eye can see. It's a grueling sight for Ghost. Then it becomes worse when he finds the body of his mother among the victims. He also finds the doll of the girl from before and assumes the worst. Suddenly, he hears chanting, and it looks like Vikings set up a 1v1 between a random Viking and this poor schmuck. It's Ghost's father. One of them stops the entire fight to tell the other Vikings to show some respect. Respect meaning he gets ended with this blade. Ghost comes in, but his father's done for. One of the Vikings says that Ghost looks different from the others, so they give him a chance and a sword to defend himself. They berate him, but he shows his stuff by taking this guy's eyeball and his shield. He makes a break for it and runs to the forest, but they want his head, so they're chasing after him. More and more Vikings on his tuchus, and they begin to surround him and pelt him with arrows. He disappears into the forest, so the Vikings are careful to track him into this desolate swamp. Surprise! In the water the whole time. The price of not knowing? Promotion to corpse. Another one comes, so he channels his inner Captain America and throws that shield. He steals one of their horses and rides off. Soon, he's locking into battle with another Viking, but he turns him into minced meat. He returns to his place on the hills to get some stuff, but the Vikings surround him. He gets shot with an arrow, but manages to escape by sliding down a snowy mountain with a shield. Of course, the Vikings are doing the same, and they actually do some damage to him. He picks them off one by one, mostly kicking them off their sleds. Then he takes the plunge at the end of the cliff. The Vikings are trying to locate him, but they don't see him. Well, he's right here, washed upon the rocks. He slowly scales upwards thanks to his wounds. Then he manages to retreat to a nearby forest. Back to the Vikings. The guy that lost that eyeball gets some stitches. Then the scout following Ghost returns empty-handed, telling their bigwig that he lost him. The scout is then battered to a pulp by One-Eyed Willie here, and one of the bigwigs say he's gonna lead him to the next village, which One-Eye wants to eradicate. Back to Ghost's POV. He's trekking through the icy mountains, tired and dizzy, while the Vikings begin to mobilize. Ghost is sneaking from the brushes and tries to move past them, while they hear something rustling in the bushes, somewhere nearby. It's Pathfinder and his tribe. They know Ghost is somewhere nearby, due to his feathers being left in prickly vines. They venture inside a cave, and find the wounded Ghost. Starfire tends to him. Then his cave bear shows out of nowhere. It terrorizes the survivors, but Pathfinder calls it to distract it. Suddenly, he bows before it. Then it rushes towards him. He's prepared though, because as soon as the bear lands on him, he pierces it with a spear. Somewhere not too far, the Vikings are tracking their hides with hounds, and their scent is picked up at the neighboring village. They're celebrating, dancing around a fire, and all the children are laughing it up. This guy makes googly eyes again with Starfire, but she has to go back to this hut, where there's an ongoing ritual. The father is doing the ritual to Ghost, and he's getting PTSD from the crummy Viking childhood. He calms down once the arrowhead's removed, and then Pathfinder blows some mystical smoke into his face. The healing ritual is done, so Pathfinder is done for the night. Starfire takes the chance to hold Ghost's hand, and wonders what he's dreaming about. The next day, the tribespeople are all worried that Ghost might be one of the enemy, but their chief, Pathfinder, defends him in this regard and shows the arrowhead that was lodged into his back. He says they're hunting him, but here's Ghost now. He warns the village that they're coming to eradicate them all. He also says that they might let one survive to follow him into the next village, but that poor sucker's tongue will be cut out so they can't warn anybody.
They're dead.
Ghost gets accused of leading him here, but he did insist earlier to leave him in the cave, so they have to stand and fight. Ghost is also against this because they're heavily armed and armored. Speaking of Vikings though, they've already reached the cave. The civilians in the village begin to evacuate and move their things, while Pathfinder gives directions on where to flee and in what direction. He doesn't want any more lives to end, so he lets a few of his people go, and then he asks what Ghost will do. Ghost says that he'll shave off some Viking heads up until his last breath. Pathfinder lets him go to find his own path because his heart just screams nothing but vengeance, so he makes his way with some supplies, and this guy who keeps tailing him around. He doesn't want more collateral damage, so he tries to scare him off, but he just won't let up. Starfire and the other villagers, a lot of them children, head out to evacuate the village, while Billy Butcher and his lackey here trek through the mountains, grassland, and forests. Then the two reach the canyon where all the paths intersect. He says this is going to be the place to trap and annihilate all the Vikings.
We'll greet them here.
They take a look at the cave, and we see the Vikings are making their way post-haste. Suddenly, some of the warrior natives say that Starfire's gone, so this guy's gonna go looking for her and have the head of the dragon leader, which is what they call the Viking leader. Back at the intersection, Ghost is preparing his armaments and traps, and then night falls. The Vikings get to the intersection, and their leader says they're nearby. At the cave, Ghost is sleeping. Then he's ambushed by someone. Too bad for them, cause he's also armed. Turns out the assailant was Pathfinder, and he's just here to talk to him. He just wants to trust in his big sword, but he says it might cut two ways, so the Pathfinder suddenly stabs himself. Surprise, it's a dream, big guy. He takes a little walk outside, and it turns out he does have a visitor. It's Starfire. Ghost is shocked to know that she's here, and she says that there's two wolves fighting in a man's heart. One is love, the other is hate. Who wins? Well, she said the one that's best fed will have victory. After their affair, Starfire wonders about the Vikings, but Ghost just tells her they're beasts, living for the thrill of the hunt. Suddenly, a war horn sounded off, and Ghost knows they're near. Right you are, because they begin to sprawl around the intersection. Ghost has the upper hand with the element of surprise and booby traps. Soon he takes some of their armor and begins to shave them off one by one with the same ambush tactics. The rest hear and find a horse with a corpse being dragged around it. That's their second mistake, because that's a Trojan horse and Ghost is the surprise inside. He begins slicing them one by one, and he rides off and retreats for a while. Starfire and the other guys are hiding underneath a spike trap as they're waiting for the perfect time to strike, which is now. Soon they help Ghost turn this other guy into a dangling piñata, and Ghost's lackey manages to get a headshot. They regroup, and Ghost says their rendezvous would be in the cave, so he musters himself with the world's biggest pair of balls and shows up in front of all the Viking forces, showing them the severed head of one of their guys. They didn't cast him as Billy Butcher for nothing. Suddenly, Starfire's simp shows up with a small army, which makes Ghost panic. They're all wiped out thanks to that spike trap. Useless. The Vikings come to finish off their stupid lives, and Starfire's simp tries to shoot an arrow to one of their heads, but he luckily gets saved by Ghost. The Vikings see this and chase after him, which, to be honest, he should have left them to be mutilated. He lays the simp down and he just instructs him to save Starfire, so he leaves him to distract the Vikings. He only manages to shoot down one of them. What a scrub. Ghost makes his way back to the cave, and the Vikings follow him. He's moving around him, but then Starfire's shown to be hiding within the crevices. She gets caught by one of the Viking grunts, but she smashes his delicate little Viking balls with this skull. She can totally take care of herself. Ghost is still looking for her, and she's making her way around the stone cave until she gets caught by this even bigger Viking. She struggles to break free, while the lackey tries to stave him off by stabbing him multiple times, but oh boy, he's packing some armor. Try as he might and stab as many times as he likes, he meets his nameless end by the big Viking's blade. Ghost eventually finds the nameless lackey breathing his last breath, so he holds him as he slowly fades into the abyss. Suddenly, the big Viking comes out of nowhere, but thanks to his sword, Ghost survives this encounter and ends his life. Starfire, on the other hand, is being tracked by the Vikings as she scurries away from him like a little mouse. Suddenly, someone has her yet again, but this time it's Ghost. He tries to lead Starfire away from the Vikings, but they have to be careful not to make too much noise. At the village, some of the unlucky stragglers from the natives get massacred, but one of them sees that Ghost isn't one of the victims. Speaking of which, Ghost peers out of the caves and finds that one of them is being burned without 11 secret spices. So Ghost wants to add those spices, but Starfire warns against it. Suddenly, the poor burning schmuck is put out of his misery by an arrow, and it's Pathfinder. The Vikings see this and move to their position, so Ghost unleashes Billy Butcher and butchers all in his path, while Pathfinder and Starfire are not too far behind, aiding him in his road to violence. Suddenly, Ghost saves one of the tribeswomen being held hostage, but this makes him overwhelmed by the Vikings. They're held in chains, while one Viking wants to know the location of the next village. They pick Pathfinder to be taken away, so they're taken to watch Pathfinder be snuffed out. He tells Ghost some mumbo-jumbo wisdom and is held tightly up in the air by ropes the Vikings prepared. They whip him in front of Ghost and Starfire. Then he's ripped apart like a teddy bear in Black Friday. Starfire's in utter sadness, while Ghost is interrogated by the Viking bigwigs to tell him where that next village is. Ghost doesn't want to, so this Viking's telling him that he knew his father. To make him tell him more, they bring Starfire and threaten to take her hand, literally. Ghost stops this and he agrees to bring him to the next village if they let her live. Gunnar, the Viking leader, agrees with this deal. The Viking takes the trail, but some of the grunts are about to pull a Brock Turner on Starfire, so Ghost violently stops them. They're all stopped by Gunnar, and he gives Starfire a trinket of some sort, saying the Vikings know nothing about the spring season. Soon they arrive at an empty village, so Gunnar now wants some answers. Ghost tells him that they're headed beyond the mountains. He leads him on the way there, and sets it up so that he'll be able to lead him away from the tribe. One of the grunts finds a doll from the tribe, so they buy Ghost's lie. He also gaslights him to take the breakable ice path instead of going around it. Of course, the Vikings fall for it, saying they're not cowards. A few meters in, and that ice cracks. Most of the Viking forces are left submerged, so Ghost and Starfire take the chance to eliminate a lot of them, one of which is stabbed by Starfire's trinket. Underwater, Ghost gets a vision of the Pathfinder, saying that he's the next Pathfinder. He snaps him out of it.
You already already know.
So Gunnar has no choice but to rescue him. They walk around the ice and their forces have halved. It seems that Ghost is leading them to an avalanche site, because here they find the lost hunting party from earlier. Soon, they're scaling the steep mountains, but because the trail is really narrow,
And they're all come salmon.
they take Ghost's idea and tie themselves together. They soon find some campfire lights from below, so his path looks right.
Hit me!
Then he fakes an outrage from Starfire to convince him further. Gunnar's amused, so he gives him a sling to hit her back, but he uses this to make the last Viking at the back fall, causing a domino effect. Gunnar's enraged, and it's raining men. All that's left is Gunnar and his right-hand man, so Ghost fights him off. Then he slices the rope off of Gunnar and Starfire. He also takes the fall and loses his sword, while Gunnar and Lackey hang on to the rope. Gunnar betrays the Lackey and makes him fall so that he could climb up. He's making his way for Ghost, and the two men have one last boss battle. Ghost is by his last thread, so he wants Starfire to leave.
Go!
But Gunnar holds her down. She breaks free. Then Ghost causes an avalanche by shouting he knows who he is. Mr. Krabs then takes the fall, but he still lives to try and finish off Ghost. One last final Sekiro duel, and with the right stab, Gunnar's ended by plummeting to his demise. Maybe he shouldn't do that to Homelander. Another avalanche comes and makes sure the rest of the surviving Vikings are finished. Starfire makes it to the village, but so does Ghost. He's welcomed back as a hero, and Starfire holds him tight. The tribe realizes that Ghost is the one being talked about in the prophecy.
Spirit of the prophecy.
As the mythical white horse makes another appearance, Starfire becomes the new Pathfinder, while Ghost becomes the defender of the village. Brandish your swords, cause that's it for Pathfinder. What'd you guys think about this savage movie? Let us know in the comments below using that hashtag cinema recap. This was Pathfinder by Phoenix Pictures, starring Carl Urban, Clancy Brown, and Moon Bloodgood. Until that next native conquest, farewell.